Well, hello everybody, welcome back. It is Sunday, so it's a look at as much of this as we can get in before the rains come. And yeah, with the rains coming, we had better get started. I figured the best place to start is probably where we left off yesterday. So you can see I didn't get any of the kale planted down, but I did get 4 of the cabbages in. It looks quite ridiculous to me right now. They're so little and floppy in there, and the cardboard kind of looks a little on the ugly side. But once we get to mowing the lawn and covering this up, it'll look a lot better to me. So hopefully it will do well. This third one looks like it's surviving best of all. But unfortunately, when you get those little planters with everything planted in the same cell, as it were, sometimes breaking those roots apart can just be, well, very traumatizing for the plant. And I think that's what's going on here for sure. And that one, because, well, there was a lot of root damage. It's just the best way to put that. So we'll all hope and pray for those ones. Luckily, when these things get transplanted down, they're, all in their own cups at this point, so they're gonna be just fine. And that double shard that decided to come back from having frozen, which still kind of blows me away a little bit, I'm just gonna plant beside itself there. I'm not even gonna try and separate its roots. However, when it comes to those Brussels sprouts that I got, I think I'm going to start soaking those now and try and tickle those roots apart in a much kinder fashion. Really want those to do well. Well, I want the cabbages to do well too, obviously. But anywho, that area will develop over the coming weeks. Got these peppers nicely bunkered in, nice and moist. So far they're looking like fairly happy little transplants, so that's good. Discovered this delightful little patch of chives while doing the weeding yesterday. So it's a work in progress, right? But it'll be good. It'll be good. Obviously, I've still got more weeding to do over there, but such is life. Checking on our bush beefsteak in a bag here up front. I don't know, I have to say I'm kind of impressed with those Root Pro pouches so far. The only thing I have to say that I'd like changed is handles. Handles would be great. But I like to move container plants a lot, so that might just be a me thing. Almost looks like they're developing flower starts in there. That would be fantastic. Grow, little baby, grow. A few days ago, these beautiful Saskatoon berry bushes were just covered in flowers. Now we can see the remnants of that. It doesn't take long. There are a lot of bumblebees and other pollinators around. A lot of wind. Really looks like these things are going to be well and truly loaded for us this year. So that's exciting. Now we've got to watch. And once the birds start raiding these bushes, we got to get out here basically every day, because it is well and truly a race between us and them. I have no problem sharing, but I really like Saskatoon, so I do want the lion's share out of that deal. So here we can see the last of my moment of weakness purchases. Still got to get that beautiful zucchini into the ground. Look at all those starts on there. That's going to be delightful. These peppers definitely need to go somewhere. And like I said, when it comes to these Brussels sprouts, I think I'm going to give these roots a really good soaking and try and gently separate them as best I can. Get off of the zucchini. Okay, because I'm betting I can pull this up. Look at that, eh? The cabbages were way worse than that, but I'll put that away with 2 hands in a second. There's not much going on in the crate here anymore. One last tomato cage that's been found. A couple of basils that need a new home. But they may go live with Carl and Annie, I'm not sure. I heard something about an herb garden, so we shall see. Was kind of hoping to do like a raised bed garden in there this year. Apparently didn't get around to it. Such is life. So moving around the yard from there, that kind of brings us to our, I believe these are Tumbling Tom tomatoes up in the hanger. And that sure looks like flower starts to me. Got some sprouts coming up on the side. All in all, it looks like everything's surviving and kind of doing fairly well. Got some sunburned leaves on the old stuff. Well, that's definitely flower starts there. But sunburns to be expected. I mean, they were growing in the basement under LED and fluorescent lights, so kind of expected more sunburn, to be honest. Then just down from there, we currently have the red currants, and I'm delighted to share. Look at that. And it looks like we've got some little balls forming underneath there, so we might get quite a few red currants this year. Again, it'll be a race with the birds. I figure with this one up against the railing there, it protects it a little bit from them, buys us a little bit of time, so yay! $4 investment, well, $3.97 I think. Got it on half price. Things survived a heck of a lot of, well, ordeals, and yet it's still here to tell the story and put out to fruit. Speaking of those $3.97 half-price Walmart permaculture purchases, looking at the gooseberry here, and holy, does it have a ton of flowers on it as well. Actually, it kind of puts the red currant to shame. Not sure how well they're showing up in the camera because they are quite small, but they are quite plentiful. So that is really exciting. We only got a couple off this last year, and it was the first time either Shocks or I had tried a gooseberry. And now we know it will change to the purplish color. Just got to give it time, and oh, is it worth the wait. Speaking of things on the waiting list, the last of the tomato forest that needs to go out. We'll go check on that in a second, but most of those seem to be doing fairly well. Still quite a few plants in there. Those two in the middle are a bunch of tiny little lemon boy starts, the two variety of squishy tomato to be more specific. A couple of tumbling tom reds in there, the mystery tomato, and I don't even remember what is in that multi-planting there, but I think it's some cherry type? Yeah, not sure. And then the last of the waiting peppers would be here, aside from those three that we've already looked at. This one looks like it's doing quite well. That's got to be an ahi. Yeah, the ahi calabaza. And we've got a lot of flower starts on whatever this is. The ahi ahuchapan. Still not confident with my pronunciation of that, but seems to me that little pepper plant's doing quite well. A little bit of sunburn on the, I still think it's an eggplant. Definitely need to get that into the ground though. Those couple of sage, I don't know, may or may not be joining Carl and Annie with the gnome garden. Up here, got the nicer looking peppers. I was checking out the El Oro earlier, and where did I find it? I found quite a few little flower starts in there. Oh, there's a slightly more prominent one. So I'm very hopeful that this will be nicely productive. And then while I was looking at that, I was noticing, hello ladybug, down here on what I thought was a super chili, I've got some pretty Kung Pao hybrid or cayenne looking peppers. These are definitely not super chilies. Nice and productive though, whatever it is. And there are quite a few of those chilies on there, so great. But yeah, not a super chili. Back here we've got the crimson red. Take a different angle on that, I think. And when it comes to this pepper, I've noticed a couple of things and made a couple of decisions. It's not really growing up very much, and the peppers themselves don't seem to be getting any larger. So I have decided that today they are coming off. Oh, I should have brought scissors. It's the dangers of trying to one-hand stuff. And hopefully, with them removed, see if you just peel it back, it does snap off eventually. Anyway, hopefully with them removed, the plant will go back to growing a little bit and maybe even start producing some more peppers for me. There's a decent size to this, and it would be nice in, you know, whatever we do tonight, but this one just wasn't going anywhere. Bit of a shame that. Beside it, we've got the Sugar Rush cream that has forked. Maybe trying to start putting on some flowers there. Not sure. But I was looking at its roots. Those are looking pretty nice to me, all things considered. So I'm pretty hopeful for this plant. These coffee can peppers seem to be doing alright. Then that leaves us with the super chili here. Pardon me, that super chili's on the brain. This would be the sand dollar. You'd think I'd know it. I've been looking at that pepper for years. Anyway, we do have some upward growth going on. I don't know if this particular plant is going to produce fruit for me this year, but either way, it's had a good go of it. What is that, from 2016? Yeah. It's had a good run. So I guess that brings us to Troll's Garden here in front of the fire pit mess. And I have to say, again, those, I believe it's Root Pro that sent me these things. Those fabric planters are, they're doing a pretty darn good job. That basil that I rather rudely transplanted into here, some very nice color coming up in that. Definitely seems fairly happy. Nepalese bell looks like it's growing a little bit now that it's outside. Much like that last sand dollar we were looking at, I just don't know if this is going to have a chance to be productive or not, but I sure hope it is. Don't have any more seeds for that one. And we've got the rosemary and the sage that were downstairs for so long. Look how happy this sage is. I mean, that's just, that is a very happy sage right there. And the rosemary is definitely growing upwards now that it's got the stronger sunlight. I guess, seriously, the LEDs were not enough for it, and it knows there's better out there. Oh, my shadow crossing over. And then that brings us to the Manitoba tomato we've got growing in one of these 5 gallons. This thing looks like a pretty happy tomato plant to me. We've got open flowers at the top here. Flower cluster here, flower cluster here, flower clusters there. That is absolutely fantastic. I'm very excited about that. Should definitely add well to the tomato weight. And like I've said a couple times, I'm kind of looking forward to some sort of a sauce made from this. A little bit of spice, some basil. Yeah, this would be good. So I guess moving around from there, we've got these strange little pepper rows. I'm going to be removing these cups in the near future. I found a collection of, well, paint test sticks. I'll show them to you at some point. But anyway, I'm going to use them for labels because they can be stuffed into the ground and it won't blow around like these cups will. But as we can see, these peppers seem to be adjusting fairly well and seem to be pretty darn happy with this situation. I mean, they all got a little bit of bud meal, but I think that's supposed to take a couple of weeks before it really kicks in. And they all got some of that iron earth, but I think that's supposed to take a little while to break down and get ready too. This shishito, not necessarily the happiest looking of the bunch, but that's not exactly wilted, that just wants a little water. So yeah, might even be a flower start in the middle of that. And you got the row of sand dollars. A little bit of sunburn from the transition on some of those older leaves, but some newer growth in the middle there. Same situation on this sand dollar here. This one, however, looks pretty content, and as does this one. So that could be quite an interesting row. A happy sand dollar is a pretty bushy plant. And our last row here, the MOA Scotch bonnets. I can never seem to get much size out of those. But speaking of sizable, here's a sand dollar for you. It's pretty happy to grow. Got the Sugar Rush cream there. The smaller of the red demons. Larger of the red demons. And a very questionable crimson red. It did not have a happy start in that styrofoam. So we shall see what comes of that. And I guess that takes us to bag of squash. So these guys were only just transplanted yesterday and given a little room to spread their roots out. But I'll be darned if that doesn't look like new growth. I don't remember seeing those. So I'm betting that they're pretty content. I gave it a thorough watering and then came out later and did it again, because I would really like some productivity out of these plants, especially that pumpkin. Oh, those sugar pie pumpkins are so sweet and tasty. Those are my favorites for making those pumpkin loaves. Brings us to the bunker, where there's clearly enough overgrown grass at the edge there to feed a couple of hungry rabbits. But the tomatoes look pretty happy. Again, I can just barely see the beginning of flowers. I think we're going to have a good year for tomatoes. Shouldn't be too much of a surprise though, considering how many of them turns out there are. Some nice tight clustering going on here. Probably should have buried that a little bit deeper, but this bunker only goes so far, and these were some pretty leggy plants. So that branch looks a little less than happy, but if we look at the newest growth on this, oh, once again we see flowers in the middle of that. Oh, fantastic. What's not fantastic, and I'm kind of throwing a bit of a tantrum about these, is these three patches here have yet to sprout anything but weeds. So yesterday I started soaking some corn seeds. I've got honey and cream and peaches and cream, and they are mixed up together, so I don't have a clue what's going on there. And I started soaking some pea seeds, and at some point this evening I'm going to be planting the corn back here, because I figure if the peas do end up sprouting, great, they can climb the corn. And I'll plant some peas here, because if the carrots do end up sprouting, then great, they'll be at the bottom of the peas, so shouldn't really interfere with each other. And as for this patch, well, it looks even worse than that one. So they both need a good thorough weeding. I don't expect to be getting any radishes out of that. But it does give me somewhere to plant all of that, the Brussels sprouts and the few remaining peppers, odds and sods kicking around here. Speaking of odd things and sod, here we've got the potato bunker. We made this out of some of the sod from the garden. And we don't really seem to be having any volunteer potatoes popping up this year. So Jacques and I were kind of talking about taking this 6-pack of Sweet Aroma hybrids and planting it in here instead to let it kind of grow up and take up the space, do its thing, and then it can already just kind of hang on the stakes that are already here. So hopefully that'll do well. Should probably pull down the grasses and get some volunteer, we'll say, soil from the larger patch I still haven't planted yet, and top that up a bit. But yeah, tomatoes seem pretty sturdy. They'll probably do just fine. Speaking of tomatoes, the forest seems to be hunkering in just fine. So we'll take a closer look at some of those in a minute. But the rhubarb, I am so pleased to see this growing up nice and strong. I do really enjoy things like classic rhubarb pie, and the suggestion of a rhubarb mead was made, and of course to me that goes straight to rhubarb. So yes, my strawberries may not have made it, but at least the rhubarb did. Taking a look at some of the individual tomatoes here, they're all doing fairly well, like I said, but it would take way too long if we went one by one through these. You can see the indigo rose is definitely taking on some of its trademark purple color, so that is excellent, and that's the smaller of the two. Beside it here we have the larger one. Looks pretty darn happy to me. We do have some sunburn on the older leaves, but yeah, for the most part, I'm thinking that is a very happy tomato. And then we've got the lemon boy here from my moment of weakness. For all of the ones that I started, this is not one of those, but it came with some flowers on it that I was a little concerned might fall off at the time of transplanting, but they seem to be hanging in there for now. So that's exciting. Nice tomato, that one, good flavor to it. And just up here we have the broad ripple yellow currant. This is a delightful little tomato, gift to me from Rob Bob down there in Australia. And this thing is super productive. I'm really looking forward to seeing what it can do with all of this space, because every year that I've grown it, it's been crowded no matter how much space I gave it. So I figure this year, if that's not enough space, then great. You know what I'm saying? Lots of tomatoes is always good. And over here on the other corner, got a celebrity hybrid, seems to be bunkering in, pretty content. Looks like a bit of new growth there, headed towards its stake. Another celebrity hybrid up here. And then yeah, there are quite a few stakes all up and down this side of the yard. It's nice to finally be using this half of the yard for something garden related and not just mowing it pointlessly. And once we get more of those trees down, it's going to get so much more morning sun. Oh, I'm so excited about the long term on that. But we got to fix the roof on that addition first. It looks terrible. Alright, well that kind of felt like a raindrop. So I think I'm going to run downstairs with the camera and we'll take a look at what's still growing on down there. And then we'll wrap up these shenanigans for the week. Alright. I gotta say, the first thing you notice when you come down here these days is it's definitely colder down here now that we're going into summer than it was all winter long. But that kind of makes sense because the furnace isn't coming on, so there's really nothing going on to heat the air down here. Here we've got the ex-tomato forest shelf here. That lemon's looking okay. I am kind of thinking about taking it outside. Somebody suggested that theirs was doing quite well, and I think they said northern Calgary kind of area. And if I do that, I might just take one of these coffee trees outside too, because, you know, what the heck, why not, right? Both of these ones in the brown planters do have an overflow at the bottom, so in theory, they shouldn't flood. I'm guessing if I do take them outside, those will be the ones that go. Let's take a look at the aquaponics over there, and then we'll get to the funky spectrum of the LED grow light. So with one notable exception that we'll pan onto in a second, things here are looking quite good. This basil would be the exception, but as you can see, is still not actively in the aquaponic garden, so that's purely my fault there. This one, however, seems to be struggling along just fine. Tomato definitely looks like it's preparing to be a little more productive. The mint has gone crazy, needs to be cut back. Those green onions, yeah, I think it's time to pull the onions. But the ahi panic, and forgive me as we pan up above the other light here, the ahi panic seems pretty happy. Definitely liking having the new higher light source. I can see flower starts in a few locations off to the side. I can see one that's going to have petals on it there soon. Can we get this on the camera? Can we get this guy? That one there. So this is getting kind of exciting because these will be, well, technically that's an overwintered plant because I brought that in from outside, cleaned off the soil, stuffed it into what was a hydroponic garden. Oh, there's another flower start there. And then eventually converted it to an aquaponic garden because that works better for me. And it'll be the first peppers that come from that as a basement plant, or a hydroponic plant, or an aquaponic plant. I don't know, this pepper's in a weird position for me as far as gardening goes. I don't know what classification it really falls into. But I know it seems pretty happy, and aside from whatever's going on with those leaves there, it looks prepared to keep on keeping on, so that's great. Two-tiered light effect is kind of strange, but I'll get used to it. Alright, speaking of strange lights, let's go look at the big table right after this quick shot of the fish. All still doing quite well. And definitely growing. I would be kind of curious to get another batch of feeder fish at this point just to see how they compare in size. Probably be more like that little one there, which hasn't grown anywhere near as much as the rest, but has still definitely grown. A couple of them are like little whales in there though. Still loving the look of that orange and white one. As you can see, their water's fairly clear though, and really the only maintenance it gets is once in a while I come down here with the net and scoop the poop, and and the rest of it is all the pump running it through the garden. Oh yeah, I love aquaponics. Anyway, over to the big table. Things are not looking fantastic here, but I'm not terribly surprised because, as I said, the first thing you notice when you come down here is how cold it is. This ahi panic kind of looks like it might be coming back, and I will not be sending it back outside. It's been keeping good pressure or density, I want to say, maybe, on most of these peppers. This one here is getting a little questionable. It's probably got to go. Got a lot of leaves that are struggling. Hasn't used up much of its water down there, and those roots do not look good. Not happy about that. Not happy about this ring of fire pepper either, but I'm still waiting on this ladybug cocoon to pop open. Although I think I will take this mess away from the middle of everything else. That can't be helping. Put it over there for now. This week we lost the candy apple peppers, and this went emulata. I don't think anything positive is going to come of that. I think that's all I'm going to get. It's just these two little seed leaves. So I'm a little concerned there. A couple of these bad brains, seed starts, don't seem to be doing too well. But again, there's a couple others that seem to be doing just fine. We've got another one of those bad brains that I transplanted earlier, doing just fine. Little M.A. Wartrix. The ahi habaneros finally starting to look like a healthy pepper. It's amazing considering how long that thing has looked like it was gonna die the next day. It's crazy. Chocolate Bootla down here still has its cocooned up ladybug companion, which is good. There are a few aphids on there that could use being eaten up when that thing comes out. Little paper lantern suffering ever so much, and yet putting on the flowers. Looks like the ahi panic back here could use some watering though. But look at all those flowers that you can see with the wilt on those leaves. Holy carp. Yeah, time to water that. Okay, so basically that covers the vast majority of the gardens these days. Spider plants everywhere. Not quite sure what's going on with that pitcher plant, but the very top of it looks great. The rest of it looks terrible. But the very top looks fantastic. And that's about that, really. Nothing else going on down here. It's a pretty short tour of the dungeon gardens these days, but once I get the temperature raised, I'm actually we're going into summer, and I'm thinking about putting a space heater down here, but yeah, I don't know. But once I bring the temperature back up to something a little closer to 70, these things will be a lot happier, and I'll probably start getting some more substantial growth. So we'll see. It's starting to be an awful lot of effort to grow in the basement in the summertime. I'm gonna have to work that one out. But yeah, so that wraps up Sunday, I guess. I will see you guys on Tuesday.